Hello and welcome to this talking point on the menopause. I am Victoria Dakin. I'm a physio at the Neuromuscular Centre in Winsford. And today we're going to be talking about what the menopause is, the hormones that are involved, and the physical effects of the menopause. So to start, we've got a couple of definitions here. So the menopause is the state of not having had a period in 12 months. So this is kind of a one-day event, and anything after this kind of date would be classified as post-menopause, and the bit beforehand, that kind of change, the symptomatic time, is called the perimenopause, and this is often the area that we're talking about, the symptoms, that big change period, and it can occur up to 5 years before and 15 years after the last period. So this is the long kind of part of the menopause, and the menopause can be brought on either naturally through aging or medically. So a medically induced menopause can sometimes be reversible. So, for instance, if you were undergoing kind of chemo or radiotherapy, they could cause you to have a stop in your menstrual cycle and therefore kind of have a long elongated period of no menstrual periods. And that can be reversible. However, if you are to have like a hysterectomy, then that's a permanent kind of menopause there. And that's going to happen like one day, like on one day, we're going to have that big change straight away, which is going to kind of come with its own symptoms as well. So on average in the UK, the average age for a woman to have the menopause is 51 years old. Some people have it earlier, some people have it later. And as we kind of mentioned before, symptoms can happen over a very short or a very long period of time. It depends entirely on the person. So 1 in 100 women may have their menopause before the age of 40, and 1 in 100 may have the menopause between the ages of 40 and 45, but on average it would be up to 51 years old. So here are a few symptoms of the perimenopause. This is quite a long list, so we're not going to jump into each and every one today. As said at the start, we are going to be looking mainly at the physical symptoms, and the main ones we're going to look at today will be joint pain, muscle aches, and osteoporosis. Would be here an awful lot longer if we're going into all of the details. So let's hop onto that kind of the physical health and how that's affected or impacted by the menopause. So I felt this was quite an interesting statistic that I found, that 70% of women will experience MSK, so musculoskeletal symptoms, during the menopause, and 25% of those people will have severe pain, and 40% of those with severe pain will have no structural cause or explanation for that pain, which I found was really interesting, because as a physio, we look for the root cause of pain and we try and treat it and help it and improve it. But when there is no root cause, there's no structural cause, it can be quite difficult to diagnose and kind of work along with. And there's another statistic there, 40% of women aged between 45 and 65 can have joint pain associated with the menopause. And this can come and go. It's not going to be there the whole time, but it can come and go in that time period. So pain is obviously quite a large impact on physical health, and it's quite common within people with the menopause. And this is likely due to a reduction in both estrogen and testosterone. So both of those hormones are used to help reduce pain. And during the menopause, we have a reduction in those hormones, and therefore, so a reduction in those hormones might explain an increase in pain, along with other factors of aging, such as osteoarthritis, wear and tear, and old injuries, and such thing. So this brings us a little bit more onto the hormones involved in the menopause. So the picture on the left shows a man and a woman and the changes and their hormone levels. So on the top, we have a woman, and that is showing her estrogen levels throughout her lifetime. So they kind of increase throughout her kind of 20s, 30s, and then start to lower in the 40s. And then we have that massive jump from 40 to 50, where we lose about 50% of your estrogen level. And then it goes lower in 60 and all the way down to pretty much not a lot at all by the time we're 90. In comparison, men have, and so we're comparing estrogen for women and testosterone for men, but men's testosterone levels reduce at a much slower rate, and they're kind of going from the highest levels to about 50% by the time they're 90, whereas women are dropping that in a 10-year period in the middle of their life. So this can suggest why women have such that a big change, and they have a lot more symptoms in and around that area of their life. This isn't a kind of true reflection, because women do also produce testosterone and men also do have estrogen, but it's quite a nice kind of figure to see just how big the change is between women and men. So the diagram on the right shows a little bit more about what those hormones are doing throughout, like the levels within the body. So as you can see, pre-menopause, we kind of have fluctuations in the levels, but they're all kind of regulated. And then when we come into the perimenopause, we have kind of rapid changes in the hormones, and it looks quite chaotic. And I think if you consult any woman who's been going through the perimenopause, then you'd perhaps, they might say that they feel a bit chaotic and things change an awful lot. And that is exactly what's going on inside the body. And then coming through post-menopause, we kind of have a flattening out. So we kind of have a flat line of estrogen and progesterone. As you can see, the two bold lines at the bottom. But we actually have a bit of an increase in the FSH hormone and the LH hormone. So they are the dotted lines just above. So these represent these are the hormones that stimulate the production of estrogen and progesterone, and therefore they are made to then help make estrogen and progesterone. So when estrogen and progesterone are lower and they're not being kind of made as much or produced as much, then the FSH and the LH hormone will just start to kind of rise in its levels because it's not being used up. And this is actually used as a diagnostic test for if a woman has got through to postmenopausal state, because their LH and FH hormones would be raised. So that can be used in testing. So let's go into a little bit more detail about which hormone is used for what jobs. So estrogen has lots of different jobs within our body. So it supports collagen production, and collagen is the kind of elasticity within the cells, and therefore with reduced estrogen levels, we have a reduction in elasticity within tendons and ligaments, and therefore increased risk of injury and associated pain. So we're coming back to that theory of pain once again. Estrogen also helps to reduce body inflammation levels and help to regulate bone growth. So with a reduction in estrogen, we'll have an increase in inflammation and unregulated bony growth. So we might be at higher risk of developing osteoarthritis and it get worsening at a quicker rate than if we were a male. As estrogen is an inflammatory regulator, it also has an effect on reducing inflammation. So with reduced estrogen, we have a higher risk of causing increased pain and inflammatory conditions such as tendinitis, bursitis, or frozen shoulders. Estrogen also helps to regulate body fluids and helps to remain for cells to remain hydrated and therefore healthy. So with reduced estrogen, we're perhaps not staying quite as hydrated in that way. It helps to maintain brain power and keep organs like the heart and the liver healthy. So if we're looking at brain power again, we might be looking back to that page that we saw earlier of kind of common symptoms such as brain fog and things. And we're thinking, well, maybe estrogen has an effect on that. Estrogen also helps to regulate the core body temperature. So again, looking back at that figure, we're thinking we might be having symptoms of hot flushes. And also we might be feeling more tired or having a worse night's sleep, which again can be affected because estrogen can help us to promote deep sleep during our sleep cycle. So estrogen has a huge kind of impact on a lot of different things within the body. The final one here, which you've got, is bone health. So it helps to protect existing bone against loss, and like I said before, regulates growth. So it has an important part in that. Progesterone is can be the happy hormone. So it boosts feelings of natural calmness, improves mood, and increases pain thresholds. So all of these in reverse are symptoms that we see within the perimenopause, such as feeling stressed, anxious, agitated, fluctuating in mood, and an increase in pain. So all of them can be attributed towards a reduction in progesterone. Progesterone also helps you to enjoy relaxing and rejuvenating sleep, which in turn reduces tiredness and irritability, which again are symptoms that we see within the menopause. It helps to regulate blood sugar levels and protects the lining of the womb, and also can help to build new bone. Testosterone, as women, we do also have testosterone at a lesser level to men, but this we use to help support and increase bone density and helps turn fat into muscle. So kind of helping to build muscle and bone there. It also helps to keep the heart and the liver healthy and improves in cognitive function and aids motivation. So again, we're thinking a drop in testosterone and progesterone might be related, causing things such as brain fog or irritability. So a quarter of women's testosterone is produced in the ovaries. Therefore, those who've gone through menopause by having a full hysterectomy that takes the ovaries as well as the uterus means that they may suffer a significant drop in testosterone as they enter the menopause. And this drop will be larger than women who've entered the menopause naturally, and therefore might be something that we're thinking about when talking to your GP or menopause nurse regarding HRT or hormone replacement therapy at some point. So we're going to look into the health in the menopause now and how the changes in those hormones can affect us physically. So as we said, the drop in a decrease in estrogen can decrease bone density. It will also decrease the ability to build new bone and increase the risk of osteoporosis, which is the weakening of the bones, which causes an increased risk of fractures. And therefore, we're looking at kind of maybe more fractures or a higher risk of fractures in women of this age group. And as we said before, if we've had a fracture and we've got reduced estrogen, we're then going to have a difficulty in rebuilding that bone, and we're then getting round into this spiral of an effect on bone health here. So what can we do to help us and help keep our bones nice and strong? We'll come on to that in just a little minute when we explain not just the bones but the muscles and the soft tissues and how we can help them all together. So the hormones also affect the muscle strength. So muscle strength does gradually reduce in both men and women as they grow older. However, women's will gradually start to reduce in your 30s and 40s, so perhaps a lot younger than people first imagine. And it can be caused by various aging and health-related issues, and also that large reduction in hormone levels that we're going to be seeing over that kind of ages of 40s to 50s. A decrease in estrogen will decrease the muscle mass, strength, and muscle fibers. And this can have a knock-on effect of perhaps decreasing somebody's ability to mobilize as far, to walk as far, to get out. It might be more difficult to do everyday tasks like getting up and down the stairs or in and out of chairs. And it might impair their walking speed or balance. And if we've got kind of a reduced strength, which is then causing a reduced balance, we're then at more risk of falls. And as I said before, if we've also had an effect on our bone strength, then if we fall, we're at more risk of bone fractures as well. So all of these can have a knock-on effect, and that's why we need to keep ourselves nice and healthy and strong, which I'll come on to in just a moment. So finally, we're going to talk about the effects of tendons and ligaments due to the menopause. So tendons are the connective tissue between muscles and bones, and ligaments connect the bone to the bone. So really, really important structures within the body. And they are impacted by reduced estrogen because they have, because as we just spoke about before, estrogen is used to help produce collagen. And if we've got less collagen or a slower production of collagen, we're then going to have a longer recovery time. Reduced estrogen also will decrease the tensile strength of the tendons and ligaments, which means that they'll have decreased strength under load and therefore at more risk of injury, and an increased degradation of fibers, which again will cause an increase in risk of injury. So basically, we need to keep these really, really nice and strong. So how can we do that? So in order to keep our body staying as healthy and as strong as we can, there's a few different techniques here or things that we can use here to manage that. So I'll just touch on diet, but although it's not my area, so we won't go into too much detail, but vitamin D is a great supplement for bone and calcium for bone health and strengthen the bones to help keep them nice and strong. And protein and vitamin D are great for keeping muscles strong. So I'd advise to speak to a nutritionist or a dietitian to make sure that you're getting the right input there, either through diet or through supplements. We'll just touch on HRT as well. Like I mentioned before, that's best obtained through the GP or a menopause nurse at your general practice. And this is a hormone replacement therapy, and it's used to regulate hormones to throughout the perimenopause, and therefore it can help to regulate the big changes and chaotic nature of the hormones within the perimenopause, and therefore hopefully manage some of the symptoms alongside it also. But as a physio, our bread and butter is exercise, and that is why I'm going to be focusing on that mostly. So as I've just gone through, our strength through our muscles, bones, and tendons and ligaments can be impaired by the menopause. And therefore, we want to start off as strong as we possibly can. So if we imagine our strength like a bank, the more you put in it, the more you've invested into it, and the stronger that they will be in the long run. So we want to kind of have that bank nice and full from an early age, and that puts us in the best place possible through the aging process and the things that come along with it, such as the menopause. So there's a few different ways that we exercise, and this can kind of work to the strengths of different parts of the body. So in order to keep the bones nice and strong, we want to be looking at weight-bearing exercises, such as standing, walking, sit-to-stands, and so they're really good for keeping the bones in our legs nice and strong because we're weight bearing through those. If we want to do any weight bearing through our arms, that can be done through doing any exercises where you've got maybe in 4-point kneeling on your hands and knees, or with your arms resting on the table in front of you and taking your body weight through those arms, either on a table or on the wall, to really try and load that the bones in your arms and the muscles there to keep them nice and strong. We can also do resistance training, which is really good for muscle strength. So that's any exercises using weights or machines in the gym, or just kind of a tin of beans or bottle of water at home. Anything you can find can be used as a weight, and that can be a really good way to train their muscles. The best way to help strengthen tendons and ligaments is loading them eccentrically. So this means kind of when you're doing an exercise, thinking about slowly releasing the weight back down. Or, for instance, if you're doing a sit to stand, thinking, well, when I go to sit down, I'm going to control my descent. I'm going to do it nice and slowly. And that's going to help to load the tendons as you're doing it. But the things we need to think about whilst we're exercising when we're going through the perimenopause is that we do have with with everything going on with our hormones, we are going to have a slower recovery time for post exercise and post injury. So we need to really stagger our exercises and really make sure that we're not kind of jumping in too much too soon. So just take everything nice and slowly, work the weights up and the repetitions up nice and steadily, and kind of work that to yourself independently. There's no kind of perfect for everyone, because everyone needs them repetitions and weights kind of fluctuated to make it specific for yourself. So we've got to work on kind of creating that exercise program that's going to work perfectly for yourself. And that might be figuring it out a little bit on your own, or speaking to your physio to and getting their advice on that as well. So that's taking us through today a little bit about the menopause and the hormones that are involved and how that can have a physical effect on our bodies. And then we've just kind of touched on how we can manage some of that those physical effects through exercise primarily. So I hope that's given you a little bit of info on the matter. Thank you for listening.